Opening scene, a bustling coffee shop, the hum of conversation in the background, the clinking of cups, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The camera pans to an elderly man, wearing a worn-out military cap, sitting alone at a corner table. His face is etched with lines of time, his eyes carrying the weight of stories untold. Enter a young man, mid-20s, dressed in a sharp suit, exuding confidence or perhaps arrogance. He approaches the veteran's table, and what happens next will leave you speechless. Imagine this: you're sitting in your favorite coffee shop, sipping on your latte, minding your own business, when suddenly, you witness something that makes your blood boil. A young man, clearly full of himself, walks up to an elderly veteran and says something so disrespectful, so shocking, that everyone in the room freezes. The veteran, a man who has likely seen more hardship and sacrifice than most of us can fathom, simply sits there, taking the insult in silence. But here's the twist: this young man has a secret. A secret so profound, so unexpected, that it will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about people, respect, and the power of redemption. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to get the answer to the question that's been burning in your mind since the moment you clicked on this video. Why did this happen? And what happens next will shock you to your core. Now, let's talk about you for a second. Yes, you. The person watching this video right now. You're here because you're curious. You're here because you want to know the truth. You're here because, deep down, you know that this story isn't just about a disrespectful young man and an elderly veteran, it's about something much bigger. It's about the choices we make, the consequences we face, and the unexpected ways in which our lives can intersect with others in the most profound ways. This story is about humanity, about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And trust me, by the time we're done, you're going to feel something. Maybe it'll be anger, maybe it'll be empathy, or maybe it'll be a sense of hope. But one thing's for sure: you're not going to forget this story anytime soon. Let's set the stage a little more. The elderly veteran, let's call him John, is a man who has lived a life of service. He's a man who has seen the horrors of war, who has lost friends, who has sacrificed more than most of us can imagine. And yet, here he is, sitting quietly in a coffee shop, minding his own business, when this young man, let's call him Alex, decides to confront him. Alex is the kind of guy who seems to have it all: good looks, a successful career, and the kind of confidence that borders on arrogance. But as we'll soon discover, there's more to Alex than meets the eye. Much more. The confrontation starts with a simple comment, something that seems innocuous at first, but quickly escalates into something much more serious. Alex says something that cuts deep, something that disrespects not just John, but everything he stands for. The room falls silent. Everyone is watching, waiting to see how John will respond. But John doesn't respond. He just sits there, taking it all in, his face unreadable. And then, just when you think things can't get any more intense, Alex drops a bombshell. A secret. A revelation that changes everything. Now, I know what you're thinking. What could this secret possibly be? What could Alex have said that would shock everyone in the room, and by extension, everyone watching this video? Well, that's exactly what we're going to find out. But before we get to that, let's take a moment to really understand the characters in this story. Because this isn't just a story about a confrontation in a coffee shop, it's a story about people. Real people, with real lives, real struggles, and real secrets. John, the elderly veteran, is a man who has lived through some of the most tumultuous times in recent history. He's a man who has seen the best and worst of humanity, who has fought for his country, and who has come out the other side with a quiet strength that commands respect. But John is also a man who carries a heavy burden. A burden that he's never been able to share with anyone. A burden that, as we'll soon discover, is directly tied to the events that unfold in this coffee shop. And then there's Alex. On the surface, Alex seems like the kind of guy who has it all together. He's successful, confident, and seemingly untouchable. But as we'll soon find out, Alex is hiding something. Something big. Something that has the power to change everything. And when that secret is finally revealed, it's going to leave you reeling. So, what happens next? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Because just when you think you've got this story figured out, just when you think you know how it's going to end, something happens that turns everything on its head. Something that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these characters, and about the world we live in. But here's the thing, I'm not going to give you all the answers right now. Because this story isn't just about the destination, it's about the journey. It's about the twists and turns, the highs and lows, the moments that make you gasp, and the moments that make you think. And trust me, by the time we're done, you're going to be glad you stuck around. So, what do you say? Are you ready to dive into this story? Are you ready to uncover the truth behind this shocking confrontation? Are you ready to find out what happens when a disrespectful young man crosses paths with an elderly veteran, and the secret that changes everything? If the answer is yes, then let's get started. Because this is one story you're not going to want to miss. The screen fades back in, the tension still thick in the air. The camera lingers on John's face, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the table as if bracing himself for what's coming next. Alex, now visibly shaken, takes a step back, his earlier bravado crumbling like a house of cards. The coffee shop patrons are frozen, their eyes darting between the two men, sensing that something monumental is about to unfold. But before we get to that moment, let's rewind a bit. Let's peel back the layers of this story and dive into the lives of these two men, what brought them here, to this moment, and why this confrontation is about to change everything. John's life, in many ways, is a reflection of the American dream, or at least, what it used to be. A decorated Vietnam War veteran, he spent the better part of his life serving his country, only to return home to a nation that, at times, seemed to forget the sacrifices made by men like him. But John isn't the type to complain. He's a man of few words, preferring to let his actions speak for him. In recent years, he's been living a quiet life in a small suburban town, spending his days volunteering at the local VA hospital and his nights tending to a modest garden in his backyard. To his neighbors, he's just old John, the kind man who always waves hello and never misses a chance to help someone in need. But beneath that calm exterior lies a man haunted by memories of war, of loss, and of a secret he's carried for decades. A secret that, until now, he's kept buried deep within him. Then there's Alex. On the surface, Alex is the embodiment of modern success. A rising star in the tech industry, he's the kind of guy who seems to have it all: a high-paying job, a sleek apartment in the city, and a social media feed filled with pictures of exotic vacations and trendy restaurants. But as anyone who's ever scratched beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect life knows, things aren't always what they seem. Alex's life is a carefully curated facade, one that hides a much darker reality. His recent behavior has been erratic, to say the least. Colleagues have noticed him snapping at coworkers over minor mistakes, and friends have grown concerned about his increasing isolation. There are rumors, two whispers, of financial troubles, of a failed relationship, of a past that he's been desperately trying to outrun. But what does any of this have to do with John? That's the question that's about to be answered. Rewind to a week before the confrontation. John had been going about his usual routine: coffee at his favorite shop, a visit to the VA hospital, and then home to tend to his garden. But something was different. He'd been receiving strange phone calls, the kind that leave you with a sinking feeling in your stomach. The voice on the other end was always the same: cold, calculated, and menacing. "You can't hide forever," it would say, before the line went dead. John had no idea who was calling or why, but he knew one thing: it had something to do with his past. A past he thought he'd left behind. A past that was about to come crashing into his present. Meanwhile, Alex was spiraling. The pressure at work was mounting, and his personal life was in shambles. He'd been spending more and more time at the coffee shop, not because he liked the coffee, but because it was the one place where he could escape the chaos of his life. It was there, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning, that he first noticed John. There was something about the old man that caught his attention, something that stirred a memory, long buried, in the back of his mind. At first, he couldn't place it. But the more he watched John, the more he felt a strange sense of familiarity. And then it hit him. John wasn't just some random old man. He was connected to Alex's past in a way that was about to unravel everything. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because here's where things get really interesting. As Alex's obsession with John grew, so did his paranoia. He started to notice things, small, seemingly insignificant details that, when pieced together, painted a picture that was anything but ordinary. There was the way John always sat in the same seat, his back to the wall, as if he was expecting trouble. There was the way he would occasionally glance at the door, his eyes scanning the room like a soldier on guard duty. And then there were the phone calls. Alex couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see the way John's face would darken with each call, the way his hands would tremble as he hung up the phone. It was clear that John was hiding something. But what? As the days passed, Alex's curiosity turned into something darker, something more dangerous. He began to follow John, watching him from a distance, trying to piece together the puzzle of his life. He learned about John's routine, his habits, his favorite spots in town. He even managed to dig up some information about John's military service, though the details were sketchy at best. But the more he learned, the more questions he had. Why was John so guarded? What was he hiding? And most importantly, what did any of this have to do with Alex? And then, there was the letter. Alex found it tucked under the door of his apartment one evening, the envelope blank except for his name scrawled in messy handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the words written in a shaky script that sent a chill down his spine. "You think you know the truth," it read. "But you don't. Meet me at the coffee shop tomorrow. We need to talk." There was no signature, no indication of who had sent it. But Alex knew. He knew it had to be connected to John. And so, with a mix of fear and anticipation, he went to the coffee shop the next morning, not knowing what to expect. What he found was a confrontation that would change everything. But here's the thing: this isn't just a story about two men and a secret. It's a story about the choices we make, the secrets we keep, and the ways in which our pasts can come back to haunt us. It's a story about redemption, about forgiveness, and about the power of the truth. And as we delve deeper into this mystery, as we uncover the layers of deception and betrayal, one thing becomes clear: nothing is as it seems. Not John. Not Alex. And certainly not the secret that's about to be revealed. So, what happens next? What is the secret that Alex is about to reveal? And how will it change the lives of everyone involved? Stick around, because the answers are coming. But be warned, this story is far from over. And the truth? Well, the truth is going to shock you. The screen fades to black once more, the words "to be continued" appearing again, leaving viewers desperate for the next installment. The screen fades back in, this time to a dimly lit room. The camera pans across a cluttered desk, where a single envelope sits, its edges slightly frayed, as if it's been handled multiple times. The envelope is identical to the one Alex received, blank except for a name scrawled in that same messy handwriting. But this time, the name isn't Alex's. It's Sarah's. Sarah, who until now, has been a peripheral figure in this story. Sarah, who is about to become a central player in a mystery that's growing more complex by the minute. The camera zooms in on her face as she opens the envelope, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes widening as she reads the words inside. "You're not the only one who knows," the letter says. "Meet me at the park tonight. Come alone." And just like that, the stakes are raised. The mystery deepens. And the question on everyone's mind becomes, who is Sarah, and what does she have to do with all of this? Sarah isn't just a random name plucked from thin air. She's Alex's ex-girlfriend, the one who walked away from their relationship 6 months ago, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unresolved emotions. To Alex, she was the one who got away. To Sarah, Alex was a chapter in her life she thought she'd closed for good. But as we're about to find out, some chapters have a way of reopening themselves, whether we're ready or not. Sarah's life since the breakup has been complicated. She's been trying to move on, focusing on her career as a freelance journalist, but there's always been something nagging at the back of her mind, something about Alex, about their relationship, about the way it ended. And now, with this letter in her hands, all those old feelings are rushing back, along with a sense of dread she can't quite shake. The park meeting is set for midnight, a time that feels both ominous and fitting for what's about to unfold. Sarah arrives early, her heart pounding in her chest, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of who might have sent the letter. The park is eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of every rustle of leaves, every distant sound. And then, just as the clock strikes 12, a figure emerges from the darkness. It's not Alex. It's not John. It's someone Sarah never expected to see again, a man from her past, someone she thought she'd left behind long ago. His name is Mark, and he's about to drop a bombshell that will change everything. Mark is a former colleague of Sarah's, a fellow journalist who disappeared under mysterious circumstances 2 years ago. At the time, rumors swirled about why he left. Some said he'd been fired, others said he'd gone off the grid to work on a big story. But the truth, as Sarah is about to discover, is far more complicated. Mark has been investigating something big, something dangerous, and it's directly connected to Alex and John. He doesn't give Sarah all the details, not yet, but he tells her enough to make her realize that the letter she received isn't just a random threat. It's a warning. A warning that she's in danger. And so is Alex. And so is John. But here's where things get even more complicated. Because while Sarah is trying to process everything Mark is telling her, another piece of the puzzle falls into place. Earlier that day, John had received a package at his home. Inside was an old photograph, faded and creased, but still recognizable. It was a picture of a young soldier John, decades ago, standing alongside 2 other men. One of those men is Mark. The other is someone John hasn't seen in years, someone he thought was dead. The photograph is accompanied by a note, written in the same messy handwriting as the letters sent to Alex and Sarah. The past doesn't stay buried, it reads. And neither do the secrets. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider what's happening here. We have John, a man with a past he's tried to forget, receiving a photograph that ties him to Mark, a man who's been off the grid for years. We have Alex, whose life is unraveling as he becomes increasingly obsessed with John and the secret he's hiding. And we have Sarah, who's just been pulled back into a world she thought she'd left behind, only to discover that she's now a target in a game she doesn't fully understand. The connections between these characters are becoming clearer, but so are the contradictions. Because here's the thing, not everyone is who they seem. And not every secret is what it appears to be. Take Mark, for example. On the surface, he's a journalist chasing a story. But as Sarah digs deeper, she starts to uncover inconsistencies in his narrative. Why did he really disappear 2 years ago? What's his connection to John? And why is he so invested in exposing the truth now? Then there's Alex. His obsession with John seems personal, almost pathological. But is it really about John? Or is there something else driving him, something even he doesn't fully understand? And what about John himself? He's the one with the most to lose, the one whose past is coming back to haunt him. But is he a victim in all of this? Or is there more to his story than meets the eye? As the pieces of the puzzle start to come together, one thing becomes clear: this isn't just a story about a confrontation in a coffee shop. It's a story about betrayal, about loyalty, about the lengths people will go to protect the ones they love or the secrets they're desperate to keep. It's a story that's about to take a dark turn, one that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these characters and the world they inhabit. So, what happens next? What is the secret that ties John, Alex, Sarah, and Mark together? And who is the person behind the letters, the one pulling the strings in the shadows? Stick around, because the answers are coming. But be warned, this story is far from over. And the truth? Well, the truth is going to shock you. The screen fades to black once more, the words "to be continued" appearing again, leaving viewers desperate for the next installment. The screen fades back in, this time to a dimly lit room filled with the faint hum of a flickering fluorescent light. The camera slowly zooms in on a table scattered with old photographs, newspaper clippings, and a single, weathered journal. The pages of the journal are filled with handwritten notes, some smudged with age, others underlined with urgency. The camera lingers on one particular page, where a name is circled repeatedly in red ink: Evelyn. The name means nothing to us yet. But as the camera pulls back, revealing Sarah sitting at the table, her face pale and her hands trembling, it becomes clear that this name is about to change everything. Because Evelyn isn't just a name. She's the key to a secret so explosive, so unimaginable, that it will rewrite the entire story we thought we knew. Let's rewind for a moment. After her meeting with Mark in the park, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mark had given her just enough information to pull her into the mystery, but not enough to make sense of it. He'd mentioned a woman named Evelyn. Someone connected to John, someone whose name had come up repeatedly in his investigation. But who was she? And why did Mark seem so afraid of her? Determined to find answers, Sarah began digging. She started with John, visiting him at his home under the guise of writing a human interest story about local veterans. John, ever the stoic, was polite but guarded, his answers carefully measured. But when Sarah casually mentioned Evelyn's name, something in his demeanor shifted. For a split second, his eyes betrayed a flicker of fear, or was it guilt? Before he quickly changed the subject. That was all the confirmation Sarah needed. Evelyn was important. And John knew more than he was letting on. But here's where things take a turn. While Sarah was busy unraveling the mystery of Evelyn, Alex was doing some digging of his own. Convinced that John was hiding something that could explain the strange events unfolding in his life, Alex decided to confront him directly. He showed up at John's house unannounced, demanding answers. What he got instead was a revelation that left him reeling. John, his voice heavy with regret, told Alex a story, one that began decades ago, in the jungles of Vietnam, and ended in a small American town with a secret so dark, it had been buried for generations. According to John, Evelyn wasn't just a woman. She was a ghost. A ghost from his past, a ghost who had haunted him for years, and a ghost who was now very much alive and very, very dangerous. But here's the twist: Evelyn isn't just connected to John. She's connected to Alex, too. In fact, she's his mother. A mother Alex never knew he had. A mother who had disappeared when he was just a child, leaving behind only a handful of vague memories and a lifetime of unanswered questions. According to John, Evelyn had been involved in something so dangerous, so illegal, that she'd been forced to go into hiding, leaving her son behind to protect him. But now, for reasons John couldn't or wouldn't explain, she was back. And she wasn't alone. She was working with someone who had been pulling the strings from the shadows, manipulating events to bring Alex, John, and Sarah together. But why? What did they want? And what did it have to do with the letters, the photograph, and the secrets that were now coming to light? As if that weren't enough, there's another layer to this story, one that involves Sarah in ways she never could have imagined. While going through the journal she'd found at Mark's apartment, Sarah stumbled upon a series of entries that mentioned her by name. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. But as she read further, she realized it wasn't. Mark had been investigating her. Not just her, but her family. Specifically, her father, a man she'd always believed to be a simple, hard-working mechanic. According to the journal, her father had been involved in something tied to John, to Evelyn, and to a secret operation that had taken place years ago, one that had left a trail of bodies in its wake. The more Sarah read, the more she realized that her father wasn't who she thought he was. And neither was she. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider what's happening here. We have John, a man whose past is coming back to haunt him in ways he never expected. We have Alex, who's just discovered that the mother he thought was dead is not only alive but at the center of a dangerous conspiracy. And we have Sarah, who's realizing that her entire life has been built on a lie. The connections between these characters are becoming clearer, but so are the contradictions. Because here's the thing, not everyone is who they seem. And not every secret is what it appears to be. Take Evelyn, for example. On the surface, she's a woman who disappeared to protect her son. But as the pieces of the puzzle start to come together, it becomes clear that her motives are far more complicated. Why did she really leave? What was she involved in? And why is she back now, after all these years? Then there's Mark. He's been investigating this story for years, but his sudden reappearance raises more questions than answers. Is he really trying to help Sarah? Or does he have his own agenda? And what about John? He's the one who's been carrying the weight of this secret for decades, but is he a victim in all of this? Or is there more to his story than meets the eye? As the pieces of the puzzle start to come together, one thing becomes clear: this isn't just a story about a confrontation in a coffee shop. It's a story about betrayal, about loyalty, about the lengths people will go to protect the ones they love or the secrets they're desperate to keep. It's a story that's about to take a dark turn, one that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these characters and the world they inhabit. So, what happens next? What is the secret that ties John, Alex, Sarah, and Evelyn together? And who is the person behind the letters, the one pulling the strings in the shadows? Stick around, because the answers are coming. But be warned, this story is far from over. And the truth? Well, the truth is going to shock you. The screen fades to black once more, the words "to be continued" appearing again, leaving viewers desperate for the next installment. The screen fades back in, this time to a stormy night, rain lashing against the windows of a small, dimly lit room. The camera pans to Alex, sitting at a wooden table, his face illuminated by the glow of a single lamp. In front of him lies a letter, the handwriting unmistakably the same as the ones before. But this time, the message is different. This time, it's not a warning or a clue, it's an ultimatum. "You have 24 hours, it reads. Bring me the journal, or everyone you care about will pay the price." The camera zooms in on Alex's face, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear, anger, and desperation. Because here's the thing: Alex doesn't have the journal. Sarah does. And asking her for it means confronting her about everything he's just learned about Evelyn, about his past, about the lies that have shaped his life. But time is running out. And the choices he's about to make will change everything. Let's rewind for a moment. After learning the truth about Evelyn, Alex had been in a state of shock. His entire life, everything he thought he knew about himself, had been turned upside down. He'd spent hours pacing his apartment, trying to make sense of it all, but the more he thought about it, the more questions he had. Why had Evelyn left him? What had she been involved in? And why was she back now, after all these years? But before he could even begin to process those questions, the letter arrived. The ultimatum. And with it, a chilling realization: whoever was behind this, whether it was Evelyn, Mark, or someone else entirely, they weren't playing games. They were deadly serious. And they were willing to do whatever it took to get what they wanted. But here's the problem: the journal isn't just a book filled with notes and clues. It's a Pandora's box, a collection of secrets so explosive that whoever possesses it holds unimaginable power. And Sarah, unaware of the danger she's in, has no idea what she's sitting on. For Alex, this creates an impossible choice. He can either go to Sarah, tell her the truth, and risk dragging her deeper into this nightmare, or he can try to protect her by keeping her in the dark, but in doing so, he risks putting her in even greater danger. Because one thing is clear: whoever sent the letter isn't going to stop until they get what they want. And if Alex doesn't act fast, people are going to get hurt. Maybe even killed. Meanwhile, Sarah is grappling with her own impossible choices. After discovering the journal and the entries about her father, she's been consumed by a mix of anger, confusion, and fear. She wants answers, but every path she takes seems to lead to more questions. She's tried reaching out to Mark, but he's gone silent, leaving her with nothing but the journal and a growing sense of paranoia. And then there's John. She knows he's hiding something, but every time she tries to confront him, he shuts her down, his face a mask of guilt and regret. But Sarah isn't the type to back down. She's a journalist, after all, and if there's one thing she's good at, it's digging for the truth. Even if that truth is something she's not ready to face. But here's where things get even more complicated. Because while Sarah is busy trying to unravel the mystery of her father's past, she's also being watched. Unbeknownst to her, someone has been following her, tracking her every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment is coming sooner than she thinks. Because the journal isn't just a threat to Alex. It's a threat to everyone involved. And the person who wants it will stop at nothing to get it, even if that means hurting Sarah to do it. And then there's John. The man at the center of it all. The man who's been carrying the weight of this secret for decades. For John, the stakes are even higher. Because he knows something the others don't. He knows why Evelyn disappeared. He knows why she's back. And he knows what's at risk if the truth comes out. But here's the thing, John is tired. Tired of running. Tired of hiding. Tired of living with the guilt. And as the clock ticks down, he's faced with an impossible choice of his own. He can either continue to protect the secret, risking the lives of everyone involved, or he can come clean, knowing that doing so could destroy everything and everyone he cares about. As the storm rages outside, the tension inside is reaching a boiling point. Alex, Sarah, and John are all being pulled in different directions, each faced with choices that could change their lives forever. But here's the thing, they're not the only ones involved. There are other shadowy figures lurking in the background, waiting for the right moment to strike. And as the pieces of the puzzle start to come together, one thing becomes clear: this isn't just a story about a confrontation in a coffee shop. It's a story about betrayal, about loyalty, about the lengths people will go to protect the ones they love or the secrets they're desperate to keep. It's a story that's about to take a dark turn, one that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these characters and the world they inhabit. So, what happens next? Will Alex confront Sarah about the journal? Will Sarah uncover the truth about her father? And will John finally come clean about the secret he's been hiding? Stick around, because the answers are coming. But be warned, this story is far from over. And the truth? Well, the truth is going to shock you. The screen fades to black once more, the words "to be continued" appearing again, leaving viewers desperate for the next installment. The screen fades into a chaotic scene, a dimly lit warehouse, the air thick with tension, the sound of footsteps echoing ominously. The camera pans to reveal Alex, Sarah, and John, standing in the center of the room, their faces etched with fear and determination. Surrounding them are shadowy figures, their identities obscured by the darkness, but their presence unmistakably threatening. In the middle of it all stands a man they all thought they could trust. A man who's been pulling the strings from the very beginning. The camera zooms in on his face, and the truth hits like a thunderclap: it's Mark. But this isn't the Mark they thought they knew. This is a man with a hidden agenda, a man who's been playing them all along. And as he steps forward, a cold smile playing on his lips, the true scale of the conspiracy begins to unravel, a conspiracy that goes far deeper than any of them could have imagined. Let's rewind for a moment. After receiving the ultimatum, Alex had no choice but to go to Sarah. He showed up at her apartment, the storm still raging outside, and told her everything about Evelyn, about the journal, about the danger they were all in. At first, Sarah was furious. How could Alex keep something like this from her? How could he drag her into this mess without even warning her? But as the reality of the situation sank in, her anger gave way to fear. Because here's the thing, the journal isn't just a collection of secrets. It's evidence. Evidence of a conspiracy that goes back decades, involving powerful people who will stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. And now, because of Alex, Sarah is a target. Just like him. Just like John. But here's where things take a turn. As Alex and Sarah were trying to figure out their next move, John received a phone call. It was Evelyn. Her voice was calm but urgent, and she had one message: meet me at the warehouse. It's time to end this. John knew it was a risk, but he also knew he had no choice. Whatever was about to happen, it had to end tonight. So, he called Alex and Sarah, and together, they made their way to the warehouse, not knowing what or who they would find there. What they found was Mark. but not the Mark they thought they knew. This Mark was different, cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. As he stepped into the light, he began to explain. The journal, the letters, the threats, it had all been part of his plan. A plan to expose the conspiracy, yes, but also a plan to manipulate Alex, Sarah, and John into doing his dirty work. Because here's the truth, Mark isn't just a journalist. He's a former operative, a man who's been working in the shadows for years, gathering information, pulling strings, and waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment has come. But here's the twist, Mark isn't working alone. He's part of a larger network, a web of powerful individuals who have been manipulating events from behind the scenes for years. These are people with money, influence, and no regard for human life. People who will do whatever it takes to protect their interests. And now, because of Mark, Alex, Sarah, and John are caught in the middle of it all. But here's the thing, Mark doesn't care about them. To him, they're just pawns in a much larger game. And if they get hurt or worse in the process, so be it. As the reality of the situation sinks in, the tension in the room becomes almost unbearable. Alex, Sarah, and John are trapped, surrounded by enemies, with no way out. But here's where things get even more complicated. Because while Mark is busy laying out his plan, another figure emerges from the shadows. It's Evelyn. But this isn't the Evelyn Alex imagined. This is a woman hardened by years of running, of hiding, of living in fear. And as she steps forward, her eyes locking with John's, it becomes clear that she's not here to help. She's here to finish what she started. But here's the thing, Evelyn isn't the villain in this story. She's a victim, just like Alex, Sarah, and John. A victim of a system that chews people up and spits them out, a system that values power over humanity. And now, after years of running, she's finally ready to fight back. But to do that, she needs the journal. And she's willing to do whatever it takes to get it, even if that means betraying the people she once cared about. As the storm rages outside, the tension inside the warehouse reaches a boiling point. Alex, Sarah, and John are faced with impossible choices. Do they trust Mark, a man who's been manipulating them from the very beginning? Do they side with Evelyn, a woman who's been running from the truth for years? Or do they take matters into their own hands, risking everything to expose the conspiracy and bring the people behind it to justice? The stakes have never been higher. The danger has never been more real. And the choices they make in the next few moments will determine not just their fate, but the fate of everyone involved. So, what happens next? Will Alex, Sarah, and John find a way to outsmart Mark and Evelyn? Will they uncover the truth about the conspiracy and bring the people behind it to justice? Or will they become just another casualty in a game that's been rigged from the start? Stick around, because the answers are coming. But be warned, this story is far from over. And the truth? Well, the truth is going to shock you. The screen fades to black once more, the words "to be continued" appearing again, leaving viewers desperate for the next installment. The screen fades into the warehouse, the storm outside now a full-blown tempest, rain hammering against the windows like a drumbeat. The tension inside is palpable, the air thick with the weight of unspoken truths and unresolved conflicts. Alex, Sarah, and John stand in the center of the room, their backs to each other, surrounded by Mark's shadowy figures. Mark himself is front and center, his cold smile now replaced by a look of grim determination. Evelyn is nearby, her eyes darting between John and Alex, her expression unreadable. The journal, the key to everything, is clutched tightly in Sarah's hands. But before anyone can make a move, John steps forward, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "It's over," he says, his tone firm but laced with regret. "No more lies. No more secrets. It's time to end this." And with those words, the final act begins, a confrontation that will reveal the truth, shatter alliances, and leave everyone forever changed. Mark doesn't take John's declaration lightly. His face twists into a snarl, and he barks an order to his men, who immediately close in, their weapons drawn. But before they can act, Evelyn steps forward, her voice sharp and commanding. "Stop." She shouts, her eyes blazing with a fury that makes even Mark hesitate. "This isn't what we agreed to. This isn't why I came back." For a moment, the room is frozen, the tension so thick it feels like the air itself might crack. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Evelyn says the words that change everything: "John isn't the enemy. I am." The revelation hits like a thunderclap. Alex and Sarah stare at Evelyn, their minds struggling to process what they've just heard. John, however, doesn't seem surprised. His face is a mask of sorrow, his eyes filled with a pain that runs deeper than anyone could have imagined. "It's true," he says, his voice heavy with regret. "Evelyn wasn't just running from the conspiracy. She was running from me. Because I'm the one who betrayed her. I'm the one who sold her out." The room erupts into chaos. Mark's men, confused by the sudden shift in dynamics, lower their weapons, their eyes darting between Mark and Evelyn. Mark himself looks furious, his carefully laid plans unraveling before his eyes. But Evelyn isn't done. She turns to Alex, her expression softening for the first time. "I didn't want to leave you," she says, her voice breaking. "But I had no choice. Your father John, he made a deal with the people behind the conspiracy. He gave them me in exchange for his freedom. And I've been running ever since." Alex feels like the ground has been ripped out from under him. His entire life, everything he thought he knew about himself, about his family, has been a lie. And now, standing in front of him, is the mother he thought was dead, a woman who's been living in fear for decades because of the man he's always called his father. The betrayal is almost too much to bear. But before he can respond, Sarah steps forward, the journal still clutched in her hands. "None of this matters," she says, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "What matters is the truth. And the truth is in here." She holds up the journal, her eyes locking with Mark's. "You want it? Come and get it." What happens next is a blur. Mark lunges for the journal, but Sarah is faster. She tosses it to Alex, who catches it instinctively, his mind racing. Mark's men move to intercept him, but John steps in, his years of military training kicking in as he disarms one of them with a swift, practiced motion. Evelyn, meanwhile, is locked in a fierce argument with Mark, her voice rising above the din. "This ends now," she shouts. "No more lies. No more bloodshed. It's over." But it's not over. Not yet. Because just as it seems like the tide is turning, one of Mark's men pulls a gun and fires. The shot rings out, echoing through the warehouse like a death knell. For a moment, everything stops. And then, slowly, John collapses to the ground, a dark stain spreading across his chest. The room erupts into chaos once more. Alex drops the journal and rushes to John's side, his hands trembling as he tries to staunch the bleeding. Sarah, meanwhile, grabs the journal and makes a break for the door, her mind racing with the need to get the truth out before it's too late. Evelyn, her face a mask of fury, turns on Mark, her voice cold and deadly. "This is on you," she says. "All of it." And then, before anyone can stop her, she disarms Mark and holds the gun to his head, her finger tightening on the trigger. But here's the twist: she doesn't shoot. Instead, she lowers the gun and steps back, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "I'm not like you," she says. "I won't let this cycle of violence continue." And with that, she turns and walks away, leaving Mark and his men to deal with the fallout. As the storm outside begins to subside, the warehouse falls silent. John is rushed to the hospital, his fate hanging in the balance. Sarah, clutching the journal, makes her way to a safe location, determined to expose the truth no matter the cost. And Alex, still reeling from everything that's happened, is left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. But here's the thing: the story isn't over. Not yet. Because as the camera pans out, revealing the empty warehouse, one final detail comes into focus. On the floor, barely visible in the dim light, is a single photograph of a young John, Evelyn, and a man who looks eerily familiar. A man who, until now, has remained in the shadows. a man who's about to change everything. So, what happens next? Will John survive? Will Sarah succeed in exposing the conspiracy? And who is the man in the photograph? Stick around, because the answers are coming. But be warned, this story is far from over. And the truth? Well, the truth is going to shock you. The screen fades to black once more, the words "to be continued" appearing again, leaving viewers desperate for the next installment. The screen fades into a quiet hospital room, the soft beeping of a heart monitor the only sound breaking the silence. John lies in the bed, his face pale but peaceful, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Alex sits by his side, his hands clasped tightly together, his eyes red from exhaustion and emotion. The storm outside has passed, leaving behind a calm, clear night, the kind that feels almost surreal after the chaos that's unfolded. But as the camera pans to the window, revealing the city skyline bathed in moonlight, it becomes clear that this isn't just the end of the story. It's the beginning of something new. Something that will linger in the minds of everyone who's been a part of this journey and everyone who's been watching it unfold. John survives the shooting, but just barely. The bullet missed his heart by inches, leaving him with a long road to recovery both physically and emotionally. In the days that follow, he and Alex have a series of difficult, painful conversations. John tells Alex everything about the conspiracy, about his role in it, about the choices he made and the regrets he carries. It's not easy for either of them. There are tears, there are angry words, there are moments of silence that stretch on for what feels like hours. But in the end, there's also forgiveness. Because here's the thing, John isn't just a man who made mistakes. He's a man who's spent his life trying to make up for them. And now, with Alex by his side, he finally has a chance to do that. Meanwhile, Sarah has been busy. Using the journal as evidence, she publishes an expose that sends shockwaves through the country. The conspiracy is exposed, the powerful individuals behind it are brought to justice, and the truth finally comes to light. But here's the twist, the journal isn't just about the conspiracy. It's about the people caught in its web. People like John, like Evelyn, like Alex. People who were used, manipulated, and betrayed. And as the story spreads, it sparks a national conversation about power, corruption, and the lengths people will go to protect their secrets. Sarah becomes a hero, but she's not interested in fame. For her, this was never about glory. It was about the truth. And now that the truth is out, she can finally breathe. Evelyn, meanwhile, has disappeared. After the confrontation in the warehouse, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a note for Alex. In it, she apologizes for everything, for leaving, for lying, for not being the mother he deserved. But she also tells him something else, that she's proud of him. That he's stronger than she ever was. And that, no matter where she is, she'll always be watching over him. It's not the reunion Alex hoped for, but it's enough. Because here's the thing, Evelyn isn't just a victim. She's a survivor. And now, after years of running, she's finally free. As for Mark, his fate is less clear. After the warehouse incident, he's arrested and charged with a litany of crimes, but he refuses to talk. To this day, no one knows the full extent of his involvement in the conspiracy or whether he was working alone. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter. Because the truth is out. And no amount of lies, no amount of manipulation, can change that. The story ends where it began, in a coffee shop. But this time, it's different. Alex sits at a table, a cup of coffee in front of him, his face calm but thoughtful. Across from him sits Sarah, her laptop open, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she works on her next story. The two of them have become close in the aftermath of everything that's happened, bound together by the shared experience of uncovering the truth. And as they sit there, talking and laughing, it's clear that they both found something they've been searching for, peace. But here's the thing, the story isn't really over. Because as the camera pulls back, revealing the bustling coffee shop, the city outside, and the world beyond, it becomes clear that this is just one chapter in a much larger story. A story about power, about corruption, about the choices we make and the consequences we face. A story that's still being written. And as the screen fades to black, one final image appears, the photograph from the warehouse, the one of John, Evelyn, and the mysterious man. The man whose identity remains unknown. The man who, even now, is still out there. Watching. Waiting. Planning. So, what happens next? That's up to you. Because here's the thing, the truth is out there. And it's up to all of us to find it. The screen fades to black, the words the end. Or is it? Appearing on the screen, leaving viewers with a sense of closure and a lingering sense of mystery.